So whenever we talk about Jin, we're talking about a type of force, or the way in which we create a type of force. So Shun Jin is like this kind of special type of Jin, special type of force. So Shun literally means to follow, or to move along in the same direction. So when we're talking about this, it's almost like you've thrown like a stone on water and it's skipping along. So the force that gets applied, we could describe it with a different Jing. So it could be Bung Jing, but then whatever happens in the situation, it might be that I've thrown a punch, the guy stepped back, I immediately just slide into the next punch, into the second strike. And we call that kind of transitional period the Shun, or we slide, we skip, move in. And it's that skip that's the Shun Jing. So, and there's loads of different kind of situations where we might use it, and you can see examples of this in other arts and stuff. I mean, the really famous one that I usually use an example is Mike Tyson, and he'd strike like a low hook here, and so if you've got some kind of like guard, I'd come in and hit here, and you've dropped your guard, and immediately using the same momentum hook around to here. So he'd usually do it on a step here, and then he'd continue his step here. So you get this like boom, kind of movement. We'll do it from this side so Joe can see. So it's like I step and hit here, and then immediately up here. So the movement is continued. The momentum is kind of conserved into the next movement, and I think it's quite important in what we call threading into one, or the way we conserve energy. We either do that from my experience. We either do that from what we call reeling, or we reel the energy back and then send it back. So in the 5 elements, say if we do P-Tran, the energy is coming out, we're compressing, and then we bring that energy back into the body and roll it up and send it out again. So that's a example of reeling. The other way would be Shun. So if I do a bung, so I compress, I expand, and there I stop. But rather than pull it, we can pull this back in and do another. Rather than do that, I go 1, 2. So I'm using the same energy that to skip forwards. I think that depending on what we're doing, to continue our movement, our energy into the next movement, we're either going to try and use a reel, or we're going to use a shun, or alternatively, we let that energy go and we have to start again. We have to put some more energy in.
So it's like the brakes on a car that charge up the battery. You're recycling energy, and it gives you a faster response into the next thing. It also allows you to recover energy from that would normally be lost, and to reuse it and to be efficient. I mean, the other thing that this touches on is feints, because you were talking about the Tyson example, and now that might be called a feint. But some people consider a feint to be just from the start a trick, or to have nothing in it. So I suppose it's worth mentioning that if I hadn't have covered, then I would have been struck with full power.
And when you watch examples of Tyson doing this, he quite often lands that first punch, and that even helps his shun, because when it lands, he hits, and then there's like a bounce. He's hit something solid. He's gone boom. And either the guys step back, which gives him the clearance to hit here, or he's hit that and it's bounced his hand back and it goes through. And Shun Jin, it doesn't matter which happens. If you displace the person, then you're just following through with the same momentum, with the same movement, and you just continue and hit them in their new position. If it hasn't displaced them, it just bounces the hand out, and you just realign the target so you can hit.
What you're saying is it works on bigger guys than little guys as well.
Even if you hit someone pretty solid, they're still going to feel the pain. It's still hurt them. You just get.
It also jams the arm. It's a distraction. It's like it jams the arm down. It makes me think about this and not think about this.
Think about that. Another quite famous kind of, or simple example of Shun Jin would be if you were to do an actual block, like a karate style block, so if I block, now if I go force on force, then maybe this is going to stop it. Maybe I'll go through your arm, or but the idea is that if we're going to use Shun Jin here, is that as I feel that, I can slip off and strike here. So we'd call that Shun, because here's the first issue of force, and we go, right, that's not working, we'll slip and use the same momentum, use the same movement, we're following through, bang, hit with the second.
We see it so much in links. It's not obvious when you learn it the first time. But I mean, there's obvious examples like we do in bear, where we have like a double beat, double, and we go boom boom, So we go high, experience a block, and then boom, underneath.
So in that case, you go high there, and that's it. You're gonna hit.
So we see that sort of stuff in our animal links. But I mean, it's also just built into the language of the art, because we have the idea of we always move everything. So the idea that we do our bung, and then the next thing, everything moves again. So we've got constantly shifting feet. The footwork is still there.
The footwork's constantly moving. In terms of more examples of Shun Jin, I was just thinking like chicken uses this quite a bit, and it uses its palm to. It will use the same hand quite often. So if you're striking,
you're talking a little bit about Nanjing, right? Or kind of the grey area.
Well, I can use this to and I'm striking, and immediately boom into here. So I'm using this like bounce, bounce to follow up my strike with a bung, a low strike. It's the same kind of bang, hit here, and then skip into there. So here, that skip is the Shun. The energy that you're being struck with in that case would probably be bunging, because here when I strike down is more of the compression, and then when I come up it's an expansion. So I'm using compress, expand. So I'm kind of using bunging, but it's the skip that's the Shun. So you get into this like really complex, like which Jin am I using? And in actual fact, it doesn't particularly matter. But as long as you're aware that you can skip that energy, or you can reel it, or you can just blast through some.
It's really difficult, because your intention needs to change continuously. It doesn't just say I'm doing this, no, I'm doing this. It's changing continuously, and there's no point at which, until you've done the finishing technique.
In that example where you go low, if I saw that coming and my reaction was like, right, I'm going to hit it and go bang, and then I think, right, what can I do now? Because I've hit that's gone. Oh, I could follow it up with that. Now, if I use that logical thought process, I go, what now? You probably hit me by the time I thought. So you've got to get to the point where it's automatic. It's like bang bang, and without the thought, and that's what you're saying. Your intention is changing constantly.
I mean, remember that your intention originally might have been, I'm going to smack him in the head with my hand. And then you say, oh, there's a hand.
There's a hand. So, and I think we've probably both experienced times where when we're in partner practice, and then all of a sudden you just go and hit the guy, and it's almost like your hand moves without you thinking, and it's like, sorry, I've hit you, and that's like you've got to the point where your intention, and you're not thinking, the shin's gone, the rational mind's gone, and the intention is just following whatever it needs to do.
You're so purely sort of manifesting a particular strategy that the details of what you're doing, of what works and what doesn't work, it just happens really, and it's difficult to break it down afterwards even. If I recycle this that's going to be a strike into something that isn't a strike, and then in with the the other one, the obvious one is the power.
I think in that case where you're doing this, you could actually have like a number of options. So one would be you strike and it clears with the strike. So it's like bang, hurts, then bang, hits again. The other one is that I can slip that, so I'm going back and then in. So there I'm actually using a reel. I'm reeling the energy back to bring it into you. And then you've got this other, the slipping through and straight into it there.
Yeah, which is
kind of just which is arguably you could say it's Shun, because like you were saying, it's like I could put that strike in, but then I decide, oh, actually I'm going to follow on and hit you with that. So
is that not actually clear cut? Because the ideas of Shun are so ingrained in everything that having a clear example, I think the bear example.
The bear example is the clearest one.
so
if you're going to throw
the one with it's a high P, right?
So I then you skip off and come into the ribs.
So that is the bounce.
That is the bounce.
Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, and then you follow through and do another.
And when you're talking about feints, you might make that really obvious to get that response, so that you can slip and hit there.
Yeah.
So you're thinking like, I'm most likely going to hit you in the ribs because I'm going to get that response. But it's not that we're going to go and pull back off this.
Yeah.
It's like if there is no response,
with
a block, then that's just going to take your head off. Yeah. And it's all, and this is where we get into where you start talking about intention. So your intention, your E, is like, right, everything's focused on, I'm going to hit you here.
Yeah.
And then because it's all focused and you're like, shit, it's really going to hit me in the head, then you block and then immediately my intention switches from here down to here. I go bang.
Yeah.
And this is kind of, you need to have that ability to switch the focus of your intention.
I've experienced what you might, which is like a Xing Yi feint, which isn't a feint, but I've experienced that. And even though I've known beforehand that he said, I'm going to feint now, you still go,
I've had that shit. I've had a lot of that before. Where he's going to hit you there.
Yeah.
And you go, and then,
I remember that. Yeah. I mean, that usually comes out of Gossov.
Which is the master of switching the intention.
Yeah, absolutely.
You need to have that clarity, that kind of Hsing, the no mind, no spirit, where you can just flow without thinking to get that.
Really hard. It's a great example. It's an extreme example of the changing of your intention and changing and flowing into recycling the energy from the thing that you're changing for. So I suppose in some ways it's the name of Xing Yi, but you're trying through. I mean, it's easy to change your mind, your intention, but it's not easy to represent that physically. So the skills of coupling the energy, moving, and the physical changes to the intention is part of what we're trying to practice here. We're trying to achieve that.
And so the thing about feints is really important as well, because like we don't particularly look to feint.
The saying goes that there's no feints in Xing Yi.
There's no feints in Xing Yi. Is that we might not think that our strike's gonna land, but we're gonna make the guy think that we want it to land, and then that elicits a response, and then we flow on from the response.
I mean, in Xing Yi, it's all about flow. I mean, if you were trying to strike high, and I thought that I wasn't going to achieve it, I would try and recover it and strike low. And it doesn't matter whether the reason is that you're doing something or whether I'm doing something. I'm just recovering it and starting a new thing. So I do the very start of a technique, like the seed, and instead of letting it grow, I then just pull it all back and do something else.
Using the body to pull that energy back into me, so it's not out. Here it's pulled back and then comes out again. So it's a way to recycle the energy, to keep it contained within.